and welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, in its Nigeria Multidimensional Poverty Index report, which was launched last week, revealed that 133 million Nigerians, which represents 63% of the country's population, are currently living in poverty. The survey, which sampled over 56,000 households across the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, conducted between November 2021 and February 2022, states that 65% of poor Nigerians, which is that, of course, representing 86 million people, live in the north, while 35% of poor Nigerians, which is nearly 47 million people, live in the south. The measure used to calculate the figure was based on the Multidimensional Poverty Index, which contains several components, including health, living standard, education, work, and shocks. While the report identifies Sokoto State as having the most poverty levels across states with 91%, Ondo State ranked the lowest with 27%. Now, children, women, and persons living with disabilities are the worst hit with the poverty menace. Let's try to break down the figures so that you have a clear idea of what I'm actually talking about. There you have the sample size. The sample size, of course, precisely 56,610 households across 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. And let me say this, the National Bureau of Statistics said, now these households were picked based on senatorial districts. I did talk about the dimension earlier. And then look at this, 65% of poor people live in the north, and then 35% live in the south. Sokoto State has the highest poverty rate, 91%, the highest in the country. We'll be discussing that in a short while. Ondo State, of course, we did talk about that. Ondo State in the southwest of the country has the least poverty rate at 27%. Don't forget, it's a multi-dimensional poverty rate. And these are the dimensions: health, education, living standard, work, and shocks. Works, of course, will refer to employment, unemployment, underemployment. Shocks, of course, you would have security there. Then the multidimensional poverty is highest in rural areas. So 72% of Nigerians who live in rural areas are poor. This, of course, is the highest poverty rate in the country. So it means the majority of Nigerians who are poor actually live in rural areas. Urban multidimensional poverty rate is just around 42%. Then let's go to child multidimensional poverty index now. 67% of children 0 to 17 multidimensionally are poor. So you have 67% of children who are really poor, and 51% of all poor people are children. So of the 133 million people who are poor in this country, 51% of them are children. 90% of these children actually live in rural areas. 90% are rural children. And 90% of Northeast and Northwest children are poor. 90%. And then 75% of Southeast children are poor. For Southwest, it is 65.1%. Unfortunately, we don't have the figure for South and North Central. And then the child poverty in every state of the country is above 50%. And look at that. Bayelsa, Sokoto, Gombe, Kebbi have over 95% of child poverty in the country. So if you're looking like for the poverty capital for children in this country, you'll find that the capitals now, several capitals I should say, Bayelsa, Sokoto, Gombe, and Kebbi, they are the poverty capitals for children in Nigeria. We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, I'll be discussing this with some experts. Stay with us, don't go away.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.
Now let's discuss those figures further. I'm now being joined on the program by Ahmed Shehu, who is the coordinator, Peace Ambassadors for Humanitarian Aids and Empowerment. He joins us live from Maiduguri, the Borno State capital. And joining us from another part of Lagos is Richard Adeyinka, who is the CEO, Data Home Research and Communication. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let me start with you, Shehu, in Maiduguri. You look at the data now put out by the MBS, especially as it concerns the North, are clearly showing that the Northeast, for instance, has the highest, Northeast and Northwest now, have the highest rate of child poverty. Does that come to you as a surprise?
Well, thank you for that opportunity. Well, for us from this side of the country, we are not surprised because if you look at a community that has been affected by insurgency for 13 years, where people cannot be able to go and farm, despite that 70% of the population of the region are farmers. This is what we are expecting. It may even be worse than this. You have people who have lost their means of livelihood. You have people who once they are breadwinners of their community and of the population who have power to now beg for them to survive. So for us to be champions in this new index, I think it's not a surprise. Looking at the population that of the region, and now what we have is about 63% of the total population of Nigerians are affected by this poverty, and out of this, 87 of this is only 47 is only from the south, while we are leading with 86 million. I think out of that, I'm not surprised. And even before the insurgency, as you know, the Northeast is one of the most ravaged region. Look at the indexes in terms of education. We are leading, that is out of school children. And then coupled with this, from the Northeast, 13 years of insurgency, and from the Northwest, the issue of the banditry and then kidnapping that have made people to be hopeless and lose their means of livelihood. I think we're not surprised with this, coupled with the factors that even before there's the main aspect that everybody recognizes, the issue of lack of good governance, which really impacted and which is one of the reasons that is attributed to the issue of the insurgency and even what is happening in the Northeast. So for me, I think we are not surprised with this.
And for you, I mean, what exactly does it say about what government now needs to do, especially at the local level? Because in this case now, you look at the data released by the MBS, clearly it shows that the majority of Nigerians poor are in the rural areas. So, and the majority of the poor in this country are children, and most of these children you find in the rural areas, even in the north of the country.
Yeah. Honestly, we need to go back to the drawing board, because what this is saying is, despite all the effort of the government and other stakeholders, like it's not yet Uhuru, because you see there is a disconnect between actually the grassroots and then the governance. Talking about, for instance, in the Northeast, you see a lot of actors here supporting in terms of humanitarian support. But despite this, you see the level of support provided, the end usually did not even justify the means. And talking about the federal government, I've been involved with some of these processes of the federal government, but I think my call, next year by this time when we are having an index, I assume we have a new government. And I think the new government should develop different strategy of reaching out to the poor, because the one we are currently having, actually, to me, is not very transparent and it's not very inclusive. Because you can find people being supported, and when you ask them what is the process of getting this support, and is there any means of involving the civil society in even monitoring what is happening, it doesn't exist. So for us to get it right, I think all of us, we need to come to the drawing board, design a process that is all inclusive and that is encompassing. Most of the empowerment stop and then poverty alleviation process you see happening in this part of the region, is by the politician who collect it from the federal or state government and then try to give it to people that really matters to them or their loyalists. And with this, you cannot be able to address the poverty unless we work with the community, especially traditional religious leaders who are the custodian in the community and who really knows what is happening. So for me, I think democracy here is fine, but actually we really need to go back to the drawing board and design how we work with the community. Or at the end, as we can see, things are really falling apart in every part of the country where people are poor for us. If we do not provide the needed enabling environment for people to get their means of livelihood, I think I'm not an optimist, but what I'm saying is the conflict we're having here is not going to end. And you see a lot of people join the conflict because for them just to survive, because we have experienced this in part of the state in the Lake Chad when people were given as less as 50,000 for them to join the insurgency. So sometimes it's about your ability to get food to eat, or to see what bandwagon you have to join. And I think this is a challenge to whoever is coming to govern this region, that you really need to fight the poverty, not insecurity. Insecurity has direct relationship with the issue of the poverty. When you address poverty, you are indirectly addressing the insecurity. Addressing
I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to you. Let me come to you, Richard. Shehu did talk about something important as to how, for instance, he said, you look at the social welfare program of the government, whether government at the state or federal level, the way, for instance, materials, whether you call them relief materials or materials that are actually shared to help people get out of poverty, especially in the northeast of the country, whether you're talking about relief, the way it is done, it's obviously not appropriate, not the right way. Now, how do you think this index, how important is this index now in guiding future government policies as far as poverty eradication is concerned?
Well, I think it's a form of need assessment that has been done right now for any government. It's a template for any serious politician that is coming into governance, whether at the northeast or northwest, or even at all state of the federation. We say that even the Bayelsa rivers, they are part of this, despite the big money they make from 30% derivation and other sources. So it is across board. Those in government must realize that they hold the nation this responsibility. Get to the rural areas. Governance is lacking. So
clearly we now know where the problems are.
Yes, governance is lacking at the local government level, and that is why whatever we do, we have to allow the local government to work, because they are the closest to the people. The man in Abuja really doesn't know up to 5% of the geographical area called Nigeria. So it is the local government chairmen and the officials who know these people, who live with them, who work with them. So we have the responsibility to make the local government to work, perform effectively. Restructuring is a must now with this report. This restructuring means we have to take certain responsibilities off the tables of the federal government and put them into local government. So the people at the rural level can feel the impact of government and can, benefit from this, what we call dividends of democracy. If you look at the indices, you see health, food insecurity, you see
living standard.
Yes, living standard and all of that. So it is important that our primary health care system must work. And I think federal government is trying to address that with the new National Health Insurance Authority that has just been signed into law by the president. So therefore, the primary health care centers can drive the healthcare system of the country. So that's a good thing. But law is different from practice. Law is another thing. Using it to benefit the people is another thing. And with our experience in this country, we really do not know how to solve problems. If you look at some of these things, people like our musicians in the past, Fela Anikulapo, for instance, sang about this. No housing, no health, no education for close to 50 years. So what have we been doing? Each successive government has just been sleeping. Concentrate governance in the capital and just go to sleep. What happens to the rural areas? What happens to the people who live there? Education. During the last COVID, when the nation was on lockdown, yes, some schools in the capitals, in the cities, they were doing online teaching and learning. The people of the rural areas were neglected.
They were completely non-existent.
Nobody remember them, that people here. So what we are saying is that we need to refocus our policy to meet the needs of the people. Those in government must realize that majority of our people live in the rural areas, and we have to take governance to them anyhow possible.
And I think sometimes people tend to forget that. Even our leaders tend to forget that the majority of Nigerians actually live in the rural areas.
I think so.
You look at it. I mean, the report clearly says that 72% of Nigerians are multidimensionally poor, and this 72% live in rural areas.
Yes.
And then something I'll also want you to speak to.
All right.
The report clearly shows that in that poverty, trapped in that poverty problem now, if you like, the majority of those who are trapped, they are children. So it says, for instance, that the majority of those who are poor in this country are children, and that 67% of these children, 0 to 17 years, they are multidimensionally poor, and that 51% of all, 90%, I should say, 90% of these children are children who live in rural areas.
True. This indicates that we only concentrate governance in the city centers and call the media to report them. Nobody talks about those who live in the rural areas.
And do you think the media is also doing enough in terms of
reporting? The media is not doing it. Absolutely. They are not newsmakers.
Areas.
They are not newsmakers, so nobody pays attention to them. What do you think if you have our news coverage and reportage is such that politics takes majority of what we report in this country, and those in government and their cronies, what they do also attract media attention. But the suffering of the people in the rural areas hardly attract attention. If you look at it, all our media are concentrated in the city centers. All media, TV, newspaper, radio, concentrated in the city centers. So the journalists, reporters, whom themselves may have come from the rural areas, once they begin to work in these media houses, they forget where they are coming from. They hardly go home. Politicians stay in the city centers, in the capitals. They hardly go home. You only see them during campaign for election. You see their posters. Where you don't see governance, if you go there, you will see politicians' poster campaigning for votes. But after winning the election, and even losing, you expect that those who have lost the election will even continue campaigning, going back to those places to tell them, please, we'll make your life better and all that. The moment they lose election, they also forget the rural areas. They go to the city center to continue their patronage. So everybody is guilty. The politicians, those in government, the media that should bring the problem of these people to the fore, to global attention. They are not doing anything. All our news content, they are what happened in the rural area and the city centers, in Abuja, in Lagos, in Oyo, in some states. It's important that we highlight it. Some states don't even get mentioned at all, even with their capital. Some states don't attract media attention. Not to talk. So if the capital and the governor and the commissioners and co, if they don't attract media attention, how do you expect the people in the rural areas who live on nothing, next to nothing, how do you expect them to attract media attention? So it's a multidimensional problem that requires multidimensional approach to solving. One of them is that we must take governance from the center. Federal government is taking more than it can actually handle. Give it back to the people at the rural through their local government representative. Although we should not be naive enough to say once you give more powers to the local government chairman, it means governance will automatically go down to the people. No, it doesn't mean it will happen, because experience has shown that even our local government chairmen, the moment they are voted into office, majority of them will go back to Abuja. Some will be in Lagos. They will be local government chairman running the affairs of their local government from the city centers. They only go when they want to share money.
Okay, let me even ask, let me go back to Shehu. Shehu, I know this is also a problem in the north, because I've stayed in the north, and it's something I've seen a lot, where you have local government chairmen who are local government chairmen of some rural local government areas, but they hardly stay there. They basically live in their state capitals, and they hardly come. They probably would come back just once a month to share money. That's just to pay salaries, and then they leave. How much is this a problem in the north? And why do you think it's important for this orientation to change? Because obviously, if something is not done to address rural poverty, it will definitely affect all of us.
Yeah, thank you again on that. Actually, in one instance, you cannot blame the local government chairman because of 3 reasons I'm going to mention. One of the reasons is they are not empowered. Secondly, we have been struggling to now ensure there is local government autonomy, which it doesn't happen. Mostly in the north here, just like in other part of the country, the governors dictate what happened in the local government. And usually, as you know, they are appointed, there is no election. Like for Borno State, I think it's after about 14 years, it's only now last year that we have an election for local government chairman. And now, those local government chairmen, they are usually appointed. And once you are appointed, you are not elected. I think the power you have is so less. And that gives you, makes you very vulnerable. And then the communities are also not helping matters. They see the local government chairman as ATM, where they come when their wife give birth and when their daughters are getting married, is the responsibility of the local government chairman. And where will he get the money, since the money given to him is usually calculated by the governors? So what I'm trying to say here is the problem are multidimensional. It is constitutional one, because we need the local government autonomy. Secondly, it is also involves societal reorientation, where the communities need to understand that the role of the local government chairman is not to dish handout, but to provide governance to the people. And thirdly, the system did not give them the fund to do this work. So what do? They have to come back to the city to hide in hotels, or else how could you sustain that in every week you go to your office and you have people waiting to give you, that you give them money? This is really an issue. A way out of it, if we want to get it right here, one, we need to take our responsibility seriously. And it has to start with our governance system, of which I know is difficult and it's a dream. Maybe in the near future, we're going to get this local government autonomy that we are all been fighting for. You know how it happened, how many governors voted, and how the president really got a setback in ensuring that this thing come to pass. Until and unless we get the local government autonomy, the governors will continue anointing the local government chairman, and they will continuously be controlling the resources, and the resources will not be allowed to go down to the grassroots where the services will be provided to the people. And another aspect is the people also, they can be able to start asking for this good governance. How are we going to do that? The election is now around the corner. If the people want, they can start this process by holding the governors accountable in all the state government. Since we know that the only problem for this local government autonomy to be passed is some of the governors. And we know the data we have from the civil society, we know the governors that have passed, we know the governor that has kicked against the local government autonomy. We can be able to hold them accountable. Let's sign a charter of demand with all the governors that once you are elected, you're going to sign this local government, you're going to support the process. If you do not support the process, we're going to kick you out. And this is the process we need to start. It's high time, I think, we Nigerians stop lamenting and start taking our action. There are a lot of countries that have come out of this Because why does the governors come from? It's from us.
Yes.
There are people like us that we live together, we die together, and they get the responsibility to be the governors. And that doesn't make them God. And we need to start talking to them so that they should understand that they have a stake on it. And from the notice here, for us to get it right, we need to change how we do the things. We need to empower the grassroots as observed by the last speaker. Empowering them, we should stop this political poverty elevation about the stomach infrastructures, giving money in a television where you see a heap of money being distributed to people. No, we need a sustained means of livelihood. You have aggrieved youth. You have women that are widows that they lost their means of livelihood. You have voluntary security sectors that are protecting the community. Let's come up with a sustainable means where we can ensure that we address the needs of the community, not giving them this handout and then ensuring that we appoint chairman that we control, we ask them to sign what we want to sign. So I think, as I said earlier, whoever is coming to lead this country have an Herculean task, and that task is holding them accountable and changing the way things are done. Or else I think this complication we had during the present administration will really be a child play. Because look at inflation. What you bought today in the market, when you go back tomorrow, it's almost the price is doubling. And you have some teachers, some workers who are paid less than 18,000 naira in a month. That 18,000 cannot even fuel your car. What happened to the other needs in the community? So I think from the Northeast here, security-wise, we have really suffered. We know the value of peace. We know the effect of insecurity. And we are very careful. And we used to tell people that we need to toy the line carefully, or else it's not going to be good for us. Best index.
Let me come to you, Richard. One data I want you to, one of the findings, so to speak, I'd want you to comment on is that the one that says Bayelsa, Sokoto, Gombe, and Kebbi have over 95% of child poverty. Bayelsa State is an oil-producing state. You look at how much that state makes on a monthly basis. It's really huge. Are you surprised that Bayelsa State is mentioned alongside states like Sokoto, Gombe, and Kebbi?
I'm not only surprised, I'm shocked. What do people, our politicians, those in government, we need to ask them this question. What do they do with the money they get from Abuja, from different sources? It is not only the monthly allocation from the federal government, they also get, I think, 50% derivation.
Yes.
And you have oil companies doing different kinds of programs in those places. Now, Bayelsa has no business whatsoever being in the same bracket with all these Gombe, Sokoto, and Co. Because you are getting money. What are you doing with this money? Who is asking the governor, Mr. Governor, what are you doing? Alleviate people's poverty and improve people's life. In these places, Bayelsa is just 8 local government, for Christ's sake. And it's getting much more money than states with 30, 40 local governments. Then what is Bayelsa doing? And if you consider the fact that a large chunk of the state is covered by water, so you don't have the problem of you are tying road from one place to the other. So just these communities, improve their lifestyle, look at their schools, fix them, water, provide, empower people, financial empowerment. Don't let us forget that this multidimensional poverty index is different from monetary poverty. It is different. Monetary poverty, about 40% of Nigerians with no money. Then this multidimensional. Now, what is Bayelsa doing with money? That is what our elite, particularly those from Bayelsa, should ask the governor. The money you get, what do you do with it?
And if you ask me, I would say, look, if you're comparing multidimensional poverty to monetary poverty, I think this is worse.
It is, of course, they are correlated. There is correlation, strong correlation
Yes.
between
Because
monetary
look at the
poverty.
dimensions: health,
Yes.
education, living
Yes.
standard, work and shocks,
Yes.
and much more.
If you don't have money, chances are that the school, you have private schools. If you have money, you take your children to private schools. If you don't have money, even when the schools have no roof, you just don't have a choice.
All right.
You take, so
Go on. Just wrap up.
So what I'm saying is that our elites, particularly those who are not politicians, they hold Nigerians that responsibility. Challenge the people, your friends in government, because elites, it's an elite conspiracy. The people in government, they are also friends to elites who are not in government. So these people work together. People should help. They should help. And the fact that the people in the rural area, they lack power. They don't have power to challenge those in authority beyond their vote. So our elite should help those in need. Help them to challenge those in government, so they can live up to their responsibility.
So what would be your final word now on this poverty index released by the NBS?
Well, for me, a quick recommendation is, as I mentioned, we need to go back to the drawing board, and we need to have an effective service delivery, good governance, accountability, and then transparency in how we do our things. And for us to get this right is for us to provide the necessary infrastructures for people to actualize their potential. We have full of youth here, especially from the Northeast. 70% of the people are farmers, and almost 65% of the population are youth with a lot of energy. And these youth, they need a platform to actualize their potential. It amazes me when any time our youth go out of our environment, they excel. So the question here is, what is wrong? It means something is wrong with our with the way we do our things. So I think I would recommend to, especially to the government, they should create an enabling environment. Like here, 70% of the people are already affected by the insurgency. What do? You create an enabling environment, like the SMEs, small and medium enterprises, give them some soft loan to start their businesses, give them some tax levies, create a market for them, connect them with the international community on how they can be able to have an exchange of trade and services. Then our educational system also need to play a role. Education is my background. Our school system need to also, we need to go back to the remote to teach our people how they can be able to contribute to the economy. Because what we have here is about how to draw a cockroach, how to draw a grasshopper, which at the end of the day, it doesn't have any value to our economy. So for us to get it right, for the citizens, I will urge them to, as we go out to vote, let's vote credible leaders. Let's sign a charter of demand with them, and let's hold them accountable. Because it's only when we get all these things right that we can able to have the leads that they can be able to give all the services. Anyway you look at it, it is the leadership.
Yeah. So I think we'll just have to end the discussion there. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Richard Adeyinka, thank you very much for your time. And Ahmed Shehu from Maiduguri, thank you also for joining us on the show.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so very much. All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion now from an economic perspective. We'll hear from an economist. Don't go away. Stay with us.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.